titled Solutions for Rural Development. And this started after the Rural Policy Forum to continue dialogue on varying issues that we run into within development specific to rural communities. So this month, the series is going to be focusing on bridging education and the workforce for stronger communities. So I just want to go over a couple housekeeping details before we get started. So if you're having trouble hearing me right now or throughout the webinar, seeing the slides, first for audio, make sure your volume is turned to the appropriate level. For visual, make sure that all other programs or windows are closed because sometimes that messes with the speed of the actual webinar time. If you're having severe or extreme issues, log off and log back on, and sometimes just resetting the platform is all that needs to happen to fix that. You could also type in your chat box, and we'll try and help you if there's anything we can do. As I mentioned, we are recording this webinar, and it will be made available to you after the recording sort of pulls itself together and we can get it out. And it usually happens within a week. I'll send it out. And so if you've attended these webinars before, we usually hold the Q&A until the end. However, our speakers during this time are going to be answering questions throughout the webinar, since they're going to be talking about some large topics, but as they change, it'll be more difficult to follow back around. So if you have any questions, feel free to type in that chat box, and one of the speakers will be answering those questions for you. So just to introduce ourselves, I am Maya, and I am the person talking right now, and I'm the Rural Program Coordinator for Local First Arizona. I have a background in natural resource management, sustainable tourism development, and community development, with a lot of experience in rural America. Next, we have our presenters. And so first we have Jalen, who was appointed as Navajo County Superintendent of Schools on December 2015 and was re-elected November 8th of 2016. Education has been a long-time passion of Ms. Gerlich, and she has taught and supervised preschool through post-secondary in her 28 years in Navajo County. Ms. Kate Dobler-Allen received her bachelor's from Arizona State University in 1994. Kate is currently the Regional Director of the Navajo Apache Regional Partnership Council, which is responsible for programmatic and financial strategic planning of direction and decisions that will support the region's youngest children and their families. And finally, Mr. Calman Manis works almost exclusively in rural and tribal communities. As of January 1st, he left the classroom and administration duties to take on his current role as Project Director with Rural Activation and Innovation Network, a National Science Foundation funded research grant. He works with several other educational advancement projects around the state. So these are our lovely speakers for the day, and they are a wealth of knowledge, and so I would like to hand it over to them.
Good morning. This is Jalen. I wanted to briefly with the introduction, let you know that the three of us have been working on various projects over time, and so we come together with a common purpose. So during this session, there are 4 underlying challenges in our solutions that we will be addressing. The first one is the STEAM initiatives and how it's been difficult to grow this in our area. The lack of high quality and relevant professional development for our educators. Our disconnected communities and unshared resources and how we've been addressing that issue. And finally, the workforce that is lacking soft skills. So again, as we go through this presentation, please ask questions, share your thoughts. We do welcome all of those. we first want to define that term STEM, because it's not a siloed science, technology, engineering, math, and those concepts by themselves. They are a unified, integrated concept. So it's more project-based, it's more holistic. It is not discrete pieces of concepts of knowledge. One of the interesting things that came up about the initiative of STEM is that we had a lot of teachers who are champions in our local districts in our area, and they were very discouraged at the lack of initiatives happening locally. And so they were challenged with, what are you going to do about that? And commonly we hear, we don't have the resources, we don't have the support, we don't have this, we don't have that. Well, what are you going to do about that? And they collectively formed a group called the Navapache STEM Connection Cooperative, and they are teachers who are passionate about STEM, who are passionate about teaching, but they also were passionate about getting it out to the community and what can they do to involve the community. And so within that group of teachers, there are parents who are involved. There's other community folks who are involved. And they just kind of rose up organically and came together because they saw a strong need for that happening. And having that whole piece come together. So this wonderful cadre of teachers have come together for that. One of the things that they recognized, that one of the unintended consequences of No Child Left Behind was the lack and the loss of science and technology content in classrooms. And when you start adding this term called STEAM, which is now integrating the arts. So we know that an unintended consequence of No Child Left Behind is frequently art instruction, music instruction, dance, movement, PE, all of that got pushed to the side. Now, this wonderful, and there's wonderful research to back this up, is how can we pull that together to help bind it together, and it becomes this wonderful way for kids to express themselves and also to teach some very complex concepts, and they become much more innovative. So one of the questions that we're going to pose to the audience, and a lot of times people ask, is how can I get involved in these initiatives? Well, look for the SciTech festivals in your area, participate, become part of those. You can go to that website. They're throughout the state, and they're ongoing right now. In our area, we have Innovation Nation, which is going to be in conjunction with our Northeast Regional Science Fair, March 3rd and 4th. And on the 4th, it's a Saturday, so we're going to be combining that event together, and it's going to be quite dynamic for our region. Also, providing opportunities for job shadowing, internships, volunteering in classrooms, finding out what the need is locally, and stepping up a little bit to that. As we move forward, one of our other challenges is the professional development. And as you look at the state of Arizona, we're in Navajo and Apache County, which is the way up in the northeast corner of the state. We're long and skinny counties. We're larger than most states in the east. So our question to you is, how many of you had mentors, or did you have to figure it out on your own? And everyone needs to understand that when teachers come out of college and are just beginning, they're beginners, and they need access to that high quality professional development. There's a lot of barriers when you look at this map to the distance, and you can just see how far we are from the metro area of Phoenix and Tucson. So that whole distance of location is a barrier, cost is a barrier, because we're talking about not just having training for one day, we're talking a day to leave for travel and a day to come back. And then we're asking these folks to leave their families. So those are some barriers. So one of the missions of my county office and the Apache County office is that we are working together to develop local cadres of excellent teachers who then can support their local teachers. And this helps in two ways. Number one, we have teachers who have local support, and there's someone very close who they can rely on and connect with that they see as an expert and who are experts. The other issue is now we have our local champion teachers who have an alternate pathway for professional growth. And we want to keep them in the classroom. We don't want them to always leave to go into administration. Those career paths are very narrow and they have to move. We want them to stay in their local classrooms and have an opportunity to grow professionally. And this also addresses that professional development issue. So in this map, you can see it outlines Navajo and Apache counties. You can see where Flagstaff is. Show Low is a center point. You can see from Phoenix to Show Low, it's 179 miles. You can see Tucson is 191 miles. You can see that Springerville Eager is also about a more lengthy distance than those. So looking at, can we leverage technology? Well, we have tried using video conferencing in the past. It has limited use. We're not sure exactly why that is, but we do know that our bandwidth issues are an issue, that connectivity is an issue. When you look at those types of distances, I would like to make sure you understand that to go from Show Low, for example, to the very north, that is close to a 4-hour drive. And you're crossing a lot of territory where there's no communities at all. So that connectivity gets to be quite interesting. One of the projects we are working to address that is the Education Superhighway project in Arizona. That is one of the governors endorsing that project, and it is now starting to get quite a bit of traction in the area. So one of the things that communities do is they have communities, and asking those out in the community, would you be willing to participate in that professional learning community? And when school districts have a family math night, when they have a reading night, when they have those different events that happen at those schools, are you helping and finding out who's the leader in that and helping them out and being able to make that connection? Schools want to make sure that they're on track with what the local businesses need. Frequently, we need to work on both ends of the bridge to meet in the middle. So as you can tell on this map, that distance is a real issue. So our question to you is, what are some of the barriers within your industry? How do you overcome some of those distance logistical issues? Have you been able to overcome those? Have you been able to keep your brand, your identity intact? As you can see from the map, going from one end to the county to the other along on the right-hand side, 267 miles is quite the distance to a single county entity is now working. That's why Barry Williams, my Apache County counterpart, we work together in partnership. Another partnership that we are able to work with is the First Things First Regional Committee, and working with Northland Pioneer College, who has a presence in all of that. So pulling those partnerships together is what's really important. So one of the things that we have been talking about is our workforce skills and the lack of workforce skills. We have a whole generation of very talented young men and women who are having a difficult time either finding a job, then getting the job, and then keeping the job. And there's a disconnect of who's responsible for teaching those skills? And I can hear it loud and clear that it should be the parents. Well, this is the phrase we all need to remember, and we took this on as an education group, as a Chamber of Commerce group, is that if it's not you, who? Because if we are not doing it, if the parents are not doing it, someone needs to step up to the plate. We are going to lose a lot of talent, and that talent is wonderful talent. So a couple of years ago, my office with MPC and the Show Low Chamber of Commerce, we created a program that would teach those workforce skills, and that kind of evolved out of the White Mountain Business Owners Roundtable, because they listed these are the skills that are missing for the young people that we're trying to employ. They have poor communication skills. They don't even know how to shake someone's hand and understand the importance of doing that. Being reliable, being a team player, looking at those social norms are all pieces to this big puzzle, and they're just clueless when it comes to these things. So we had, last year we did not have that program go for a lot of reasons, and we identified part of the reason was there was not enough redundancy within our networks to hold that program together. So we're rejuvenating it, and we're renaming it to Are You Ready? And we're using Show High School as a pilot program. And one of our visions is to work with various chambers in the counties to look at local businesses to help sponsor this program, so that on weekends, those who are interested, the high school seniors who are interested, would get that skill set. They'd work on their resume, they'd work on mock interviews, they would understand the importance of dressing appropriately and looking at all those other pieces that are missing. High schools literally do not have the time to teach these skills. Their day is full. The curriculum demands academically are so high that they really don't have time to move forward. The one caveat in all of that is we have NAVID, which stands for Northern Arizona Vocational Institute of Technology, and it's a group of 11 plus districts that have come together, and part of those career and technical skill sets is that they insist that those students do have a lot of these soft skills be part of their curriculum. That only addresses a part of the student population. It does not address the full gamut of the student population. So we see a hole in what students need, and we're working really hard to go forward to fill that need. So I'm going to turn this time over to Kate, who's with First Things First, and she's going to address why the foundation for our students is so critical.
Good morning. Thank you, Jalen. Again, my name is Kate Dobler-Allen. I'm the Regional Director for the Navajo-Apache region of First Things First, which really is the non-tribal portions of Navajo and Apache counties. So if you think back to that map, it's about half of that geographical area of Navajo and Apache counties is this region. Cal Manis, who's managing the chat box right now, is the current chair of the Navajo Apache Regional Partnership Council. And together with Daylin and with Barry Williams from Apache County and other partners in the region, we have created an intentional aligned partnership of partners and people and resources and expertise and funding streams in the region to really create a continuum of education that begins ideally before a child is born, but certainly the day they're born, and continuing all the way through ideally bachelor's, master's level degree graduation, if not onto a PhD. And we really have come together as a connected group of partners, recognizing that the success of any of our students is really critically impacted by their experiences before they even come to school. That from a neuroscience and a brain development standpoint, and research that it has really just come to the light in the last 10 years or so really identifies the critical nature of early childhood brain development and all that happens before a child turns 5 and comes through that front door of the school into a kindergarten classroom. And that the foundational skills for all of those soft skills that we just heard about, I'm going to go back to this word cloud, but the ability to understand social boundaries, the ability to be ready to communicate in a back and forth conversation with another person, whoever that other person is really begun when that baby is born and they see their parent for the very first time. That's the foundation of all that we're trying to build. And recognizing that is really why we've all come together. We know that 90% of a child's brain, 90% of those connections are built for life by the time a child is 5 years old. Now, that doesn't mean the brain stops growing, and it doesn't mean that you stop learning, because we all have the capacity to learn. Every brain has the capacity to learn new things, to bypass damaged or injured parts of the brain. You can learn new languages, you can learn new skills, but those foundational pathways that form the brain's ability to be ready to learn new information and to be ready to be plastic and elastic and flexible. All of those connections at a neuron level are built before the age of 5, and the majority of that before the age of 3. And so it becomes even more critically apparent that the experiences we collectively together make available for our community's children are incredibly essentially important, and they determine in large part every child's ability to be successful in school and in life. And that's a fact. It's a nice thought to think that, oh, everything will just happen, but really that is not the case. And we're hearing that from multiple parts of our community. And so we really come together to figure out how we can align to address those skills that we need to see in our workforce, and really recognizing that the foundation of those skills is dependent on healthy brain development, and healthy brain development is founded on a strong and safe and secure and consistent relationship with an adult figure. This is called attachment from a developmental standpoint. And if an infant is able to form a safe and secure, consistent attachment with a primary care figure, most often that's that infant's mother or father, but not always. We know that many children are in child care opportunities because parents are working, and so brains and children develop secondary attachments to their favorite babysitter, their favorite teacher, their favorite grandparent or aunt, whoever meets their needs and responds to their need for social attachment and emotional validation. Those attachments and relationships really are predictive in a child's ability to function later in life. And certainly we see that with early on with respect to a child's readiness for kindergarten, to function in a kindergarten classroom. Children need to come in the door, ideally, having been in a group environment, having listened to an adult, having had boundaries and expectations set for them so that they knew how to behave from a social standpoint, rather than feeling like it was a free-for-all. Anybody there who was going to meet their needs or keep them safe or make sure they had food or make sure they had clothes or a safe place to eat or sleep or play. Those are all critical foundational components and experiences that lead to successful soft skills. And so we've come together to really solidify that conversation. And I'm watching the chat box, and I think there's something about brain plasticity, and Cal's calling me on jargon. So just to be sure we're clear, that really refers to the brain's ability to learn new skills and create new pathways throughout life, but that the ability to be flexible is really built before a child turns 3, certainly by 5. That if that brain is subjected to chronic significant levels of stress hormones, that changes the architecture of the brain forever. And it takes an incredible amount of additional time and work and expertise and money, frankly, to create an alternate path for that child. Not to say it isn't possible, it absolutely is possible, but it is much easier on many fronts to provide those children with strong and consistent early childhood experiences.
So looking at this word cloud in the workforce and at school workforce, we're looking at generational differences, challenges that we've never encountered. There are up to 5 generations in a workplace. And going from the standard of you work in a seat from 9 to 5, you are present, you are there, to now a landscape that says, well, I got my work is complete, I'm finished, I can remotely come in and do work, I can do things a little differently. That really rocks some people's world, to say the least. To say the least. So, and how has social media changed that landscape? We know that communication skills are at premium. So knowing that terms, looking at social networking differently, looking at feedback systems differently, and how they're influenced. We know that those generational differences are impactful. You have students in a classroom who are now born into technology, who are touching screens from the moment they can touch, literally. And with educators who are figuring systems out. So how do we bridge that difference? How do we have that not be a disconnect, but how do we embrace that? Those are some real serious challenges that we're looking at. And that paradigm shift of where does education take place? Where does work take place? And how do we pull together? How do we share those resources? And moving away from that whole idea, but this is how it was for me growing up and going through a system, to that understanding that our young people are not me. They're in a different place. It's that whole idea of, well, I want my children, my personal children, to go to college because I want them to have that experience of college that I did. Trust me, when they go to college, it's not the same experience that I had going through college. It has changed tremendously. So making those shifts and trying to recognize those shifts, and now how do we adapt to those changes?
I think this conversation is interesting, and it's triggering a little vignette just to really make this real that Jaylene and I were talking about yesterday. With the notion of smartphones and how they can be used as pieces of technology, that they are not only mobile phones, but they are so much more capable. And one of those capabilities is pictures, and it can be used as a opportunity to capture information in the moment and save it and be able to refer to it later. And so how do we begin to integrate and utilize technology or tools for students in this new generation that's different from me? I got my degree in '94. And so different from the way I thought of a cell phone and a camera and a way to capture social moments. But a smartphone could be utilized to capture spelling words, for instance, and then you've got it and you can refer back to it rather than relying on how teachers were taught to teach 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that we learn by writing over and over, we learn by rote, we learn by copying, and what we know about brain research is that that's just not the case.
Right.
So how do we integrate all of that?
Exactly, and continue that piece that students have dialogue. They need to learn how to communicate back and forth, not just on social networks. So there's another layer of challenge there, and understanding that time is finite and we're limited in the amount of time. How do you balance all those? Those are some real challenges. And then the outcome is, how do they become employable? How do they balance all that? Where we want good communicators, and we know that social networking platforms are there. How do we continue that and mesh that together? We have lots of challenges. We have a lot of work to do. One of the things that research on the millennials is that they need multiple points of feedback. They want a reason to stay, to hang around, to be in that work environment. And the same with with educating this generation that's coming through. They need a lot of feedback. An annual evaluation is not going to work. So how do we build those feedback loops and communicate those effectively to encourage them to have a reason to stay? We know those social norms are critical. We know that if we don't teach those traditional social norms, that 5-generation span, there's going to be breakdowns. And everybody's going to be wondering what went wrong. Why didn't this work out? We thought we had a good candidate here and it just didn't work out. And a lot of times, students will just fade out. They won't tell you what their problems, their frustrations were. A lot of times they just fade and move to another job. They'll fade and go to another school. They'll fade and just go off the landscape totally. And a lot of times it's because of social boundaries, some norms across cultures that might have been violated, not knowing this idea of personal space, not knowing the importance of eye contact, and all of those soft skills that we've been talking about and their importance. So looking at those directly teachings and looping back around to the project that we're working on to hopefully help with that. So understanding, if you're an employer, why they're coming to you that way, well, they haven't been taught. And it's no other, it's a simple explanation. And once they are taught, they do very, very well. We have a lot of incredibly talented folks out there who are underemployed, and this is a big reason for that.
So there are a set of soft skills that are not part of curriculum, not part of information that's taught in school. There's also this notion of needing to remember and recognize the frame that we bring to that relationship. So the generation that we are part of, and the values and the norms that we, in air quotes, believe are present all the time is not the same from generation to generation. And so part of our job and our role as supervisors, hiring folks, whether we're owners, managers, supervisors, wherever we may be, our lens, and then to reframe the language that we use to describe people that are applying for positions from generations that are younger than us. So rather than thinking about or characterizing an entire generation of millennials as needing instant gratification and making that be a negative connotation, yes, there are folks that do need instant gratification, but they're across all generations. It's not specific to one generation over another. And so I think part of what I've learned in having to reframe my own view as I've been interviewing and hiring is recognizing that the need for feedback in the moment more frequently than at the annual review so that that information can be used to change behavior and change productivity in the moment. I found it's quite useful, whether that's someone you are hiring for a position or you're managing a contract, and so you have somebody submitting data or information to you who really is looking for feedback along the way so that they can produce what it is you're looking for. And there's an openness to take that kind of information as feedback and as constructive if it's offered in that frame. And so that's also part of it's a two-way street. Relationships are a two-way street. And it's interesting to me the link between that research and brain development and that initial relationship between an infant and an adult, and how predictive that is of that infant's ability to then become a young adult and be able to engage in a relationship with a prospective employer. It's really quite similar, and it's interesting from a research standpoint, but it really critically highlights the importance of really needing those early experiences to be robust and rich and positive so that those later experiences can be as positive as it can be.
So looking at our social norms to bridge school to work, in the 21st century, we had talked etiquette and appropriate digital communication for school work and school purposes. There's a place, and knowing those boundaries, but again, they need to be directly taught. So how do you use social media? Do you use Facebook for work purposes? Do you use Facebook for hiring? How is it embedded in your business? Currently, most school districts are reluctant to use Facebook because of the abuse that they're afraid that could happen, the negatives that could happen, and how do you control that and keep the focus on what schools need to be doing, understanding again that time is finite and people cannot teach all day and then manage a Facebook page, and how do we manage all of that, and on top of what is currently the demands of school. Understanding the school day has not changed a whole lot since the 18th century, basically. I mean, seriously, 1700s. It's school day. The school year itself may have changed a bit. The issue is that we have gone from the school's purpose of reading, writing, and arithmetic to now we're having to teach all these other components. And so now we're adding this digital piece to this, and how do we leverage that to help accomplish some of those other tasks? And some of those other tasks are sex education, drug education, cancer screening, CPR, the list goes on and on and on, stranger danger, and none of these are bad. That is not what I'm trying to communicate. What I'm trying to communicate is that schools have always been viewed and seen as this all-purpose, well, the schools can do it. The schools can do it. And the schools are starting to be burdened and wearing down. So knowing that as a community, how do we take on those pieces and help? And schools are willing to do that, and teachers are willing to take on these tasks within the framework of reading instruction, mathematics instruction, science instruction. All of this is good, but meshing that together and then having students leave high school ready to be employed, well, we're seeing that some of these pieces are missing. And so how do we work together with our Chamber of Commerce and with our local community college and with the county offices and with all the different entities like First Things First to pull together and form alliances that can say, we see a problem here, we're going to solve that problem. So understanding that the netiquette and the appropriate digital behaviors we want our employees and our students. I remember talking with a high school student who said, yes, our teacher does not allow us to use our cell phones in class, but we have figured out how to text using our toes. So how do you, I mean, how do you garner and get that focus, that energy in a positive way and not a distracted way? And so that's some of the challenges that are out there. And just know that teachers, some of them are doing a wonderful job, and everyone's on the same plane when it comes to this is a baffling thing. And in productivity at work, I'm sure it is also a challenge, that how do we leverage this to be now a positive and not a negative, and it takes away productivity and moving forward.
So when we presented this in person, we posed a few questions for our audience to really gauge how is it that, having listened to the challenges and solutions that we brought, how is it that that you in your business or in your role might be able to join with an ESA or offer your resources, your ideas, your lens, your view, to help judge science projects, to help do job shadowing opportunities, to help create opportunities for students to see the work that you do, and to hear from you as a prospective employer, what is it that you want to see? And so we have a chat box, and it's really a great opportunity for us to sort of see the questions that are being posed. I know that Cal's posted a few website resources for you, but I'm curious if any of you have any questions or any thoughts or insights that have occurred to you over the last 40 minutes or so.
One of the things that has been key in all of this is our partnerships, developing relationships. We do not always have to agree. Trust me, this is not a kumbaya kind of relationship, but it is a strong and take. We have a common purpose, and we have, again, come around to this thought that if it's not you who, we see a need, and we can drive together on how this comes along. So no one person, no one group can do this alone, especially in rural areas where the distance, those challenges of distance and resources and knowing what's out there, just communicating across time and space, it gets to be a challenge. Fortunately, technology is helping that, but when we come together with that common purpose, and with that common purpose that we are in a problem-solving mode, has made the difference. So understanding that partnership is a key, and knowing, okay, that partnership worked for that particular project, they may or may not work for the next one, and understanding how to leverage that. So we really do appreciate any input that you can give to us. On the screen is our contact information. If you have questions, inputs, things that can help us out in the future, please do email us. We are very open to that. We try to answer email in a reasonable amount of time, understanding that most of us are wearing multiple hats, and that's okay. That's what we do in rural areas, is because that's who we are. It's our choice.
So I see the note from Kimberly, thank you, to connect with Arizona at Work, located throughout the state to assist with workshops on soft skills, resume, mock interviews, dress for success, job readiness, also training programs for eligible clients under WIOA. Do we know what that is? I don't know.
Is that the workforce?
Workforce innovation.
Yeah, the workforce innovation grants. I do know that they have changed.
Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Thank you, Kimberly.
Yes.
And thanks for the website as well.
Right. We have worked with that group in the past. Their grant has changed to addressing those, I call them lost children. They have left school, they are not employed, and they are not attending any kind of training program, whether it be college, community college, technical school. they are not engaged. And so their focus is to bring about training for that population. My project is looking at trying to be proactive and catch them as high school seniors before that happens. So working together, and so that we know where each of us, what we're addressing is helpful, and helping them connect and finding those youth is very important. That population is growing. It is a really big group of people, young people anymore.
It looks like there's a few more comments. Folks are typing. So keep those questions coming.
We'll be seeing.
So they're not quite showing up yet. I think we have a few moments still.
While we wait for the questions to come in, can I just jump in and mention the slide of the webinars that are coming up in the next 2 months? Next month, we have a part 2 to the last month's webinar, which was a refresh on the Main Street framework. And part 2 is actually talking to different community leaders who have implemented the new framework approach throughout the state in rural Arizona. So that'll be exciting, and that is free. It's also from 10 to 11:30. And then in April, we have just confirmed our webinar focusing on innovative approaches to rural healthcare. And I know some of the topics will be on telemedicine, dental therapy, and programs where that's being implemented in rural communities around the state, and the potential for that to come to Arizona, and different harm reduction programs that have started being implemented around the state, looking at reducing substance abuse and helping those who may struggle with addiction currently. So I just wanted to pop in and mention those upcoming webinars through our Solutions for Rural Development series. So it looks like we have maybe one more question. From Angie.
Look for community colleges. Students can join Phi Theta Kappa, the honor society for 2-year community colleges. They complete a program called 5-Star Competitive Edge. Angie, is that a workforce development support project? Soft skills. Excellent.
That's excellent. And communicating that out to those entities that need to know that information, so they know that that's available, it's always helpful.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm thinking back to when I was in high school, which was a long time ago, but I really didn't, as I was looking at colleges and sort of what do I do after high school, this kind of a resource network really wasn't available. And I know that, cousins and nieces and nephews of mine who are thinking of going to college now, they're juniors or seniors, are really not hearing about this kind of a resource. So I think the more we can do to broadcast those opportunities for community college students, which reach a lot of students, that's really great. Thanks, Angie.
I also wanted to mention that you all spoke about the importance of mentors, and I, as a probably more of a recent college graduate and now being in a master's program, can't express how helpful that is through the whole process because, I mean, yeah, you just don't really know where to start ever. So having someone to guide you through is so, even just to talk to on life experience alone is extraordinarily helpful. Um, so I want to thank our presenters today and all of our participants for continuing to make this happen and to continue the dialogue so that we can have competitive rural communities and grow our potential because it's there, and working regionally throughout the state together is going to get us there. So thank you all so much for your participation, and I look forward to having you on our upcoming webinars. Once again, I'll be sending out this recording as soon as possible, and I will include the contact information for our presenters. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.